Here we go. 25 myths about America that apparently aren't true. Check out the original video in the description. But let's have a look.
Let's begin with a really common thought. Americans are ignorant about the world.
So true. Well, they make it look like it's true. We've all seen the videos online where people go around with a microphone and they ask Americans, what is the capital of this country? Where is this country? Name me 3 countries, and they just can't. They obviously just find everyone that can't do it and then post it. It really does make it look like Americans don't know anything outside of America. But I think that's just for social media. I reckon they do. But I reckon a lot of them don't actually travel outside of America because you've got so many states. America's so large, and they mostly just travel with inside North America.
Americans are held to an unrealistic standard. Since the rest of the world watch our movies and listen to our music, they know a lot about our country. But let's be honest, they never studied it. People actually complain that Americans don't even know that Czechoslovakia doesn't exist anymore. But neither does half the United Kingdom, and they're on the same continent. It turns out that all of us are pretty bad at geography. I think
it's definitely a major issue, yes, around the world. People are crap at geography.
America would be better at it. However, considering another common thought is that America spends its days spying on everyone.
They do. They literally do spy on everyone.
And that's true. But who doesn't? Germany, France, Switzerland, Japan, Iceland, and all the rest of us spy on each other and ourselves.
Great point.
Moving on, America has been called racist. Please don't take this the wrong way. Racism definitely exists, and it makes the news. But you know what else? America also has a vicious media.
I think it's because of what happened in the past. America was so big, it was so out there, everyone knew about it. They most probably still are called it, but it happens everywhere. Look at Europe. It is still ongoing. They're trying to completely abolish it. Will you ever? You can't just say all Americans are. That's just an outright lie.
All of the world watches it, sometimes more than their own media. So when something super bad happens in other countries, it might not even make the back page. Next, it's a common misconception that Americans don't use public transport. Well,
never heard this. I actually thought Americans use a lot of public transport with the, what's it called? We call it the underground. You call it I can't remember. But basically the tubes, the trains that go underground. And a lot of like New York and stuff, it's hard to drive around. So a lot of you jump in taxis, cabs.
It's true that we use cars a lot. Many regions in America have great public transport, or at least just as good as Europe. Besides, what good is a train if nobody can afford it? We're looking at you, UK.
Plus the UK is ridiculously expensive for public transport. But plus America's large. You mostly do want to drive because towns are so far apart.
Moving on. America does/has/is fill in the blank. America is far from being a unified entity. Each state has its own laws, cultures, and quirks. Some states have the death penalty. Some don't. Some have strict gun laws, and some don't. Some have free college. Some don't. Some have tax, and yeah, some don't. So just like you can't say Europe is so-and-so, you can't say the same about the US. As an addition,
I think that is different. The US and Europe are different. Europe, we are not one. We are all separate countries. North America, you would say, is one country, but just with loads of different states. North America is completely different to Europe, but you obviously run your states as separate entities as well that then come under federal law. I think it can get very, very confusing.
Note, the states are far more independent than many of us realize. In fact, every state even has its own military, known as the Guard. Furthermore, some states pass legislation that directly contradicts the federal government. This is because in the US, the federal government is not the highest authority, the states are.
Which is mad. The states are higher authority than the federal. So how does the president then come into that? Confusing.
Further establish the fact that America isn't a single entity, many believe that Americans only speak one language. But that's no different from the rest of the world. Have you ever been to France? Or the UK? Or Italy? Or how about China? Most of them only speak one language too. That being said, over 20% of the US is bilingual.
That's quite a high number to be bilingual.
Let's talk about the military, because people outside the US will preach that America's military does, again, fill in the blank. Nobody is naive enough to think that the US doesn't have selfish interests in mind when it invades a country. There isn't a nation on earth that would do that selflessly. But whenever the bad goes down, it's just as common for other countries to complain that America should do something. On a more or less lighter note, Americans are fat.
Are they not? Are they not? I think they have a mass obesity issue, but then so do the UK. Their obesity numbers are a lot higher than, say, other countries are.
You ever been to the UK
And
lately?
the food they have is just outrageous, the size of it. But yeah, the UK has an obesity epidemic as well.
There are even scandals because obese patients are getting turned down for surgery. Yes, America does have an obesity problem. But not all citizens are involved in it. I am. A big part of the United States is fairly health conscious and is consistently working to help the overweight population better their lives. Thanks, healthy people. And while we aren't perfect, many complain that America is worse than other developed nations in, well, everything. There are many statistics, child mortality, literacy, etc., where the US falls behind countries like Norway and Iceland. But those statistics are based on averages. In Norway, most of the 5 million inhabitants are rich, white, and Norwegian. If you took a similar sample of rich, white Americans in the US, you would find that the statistics are almost exactly the same.
It's just harder. There's 300 million people in America.
The fact is that the US is hugely diverse, and the American experience is completely different with and without money. Translation? The problem isn't healthcare or education, it's economic inequality, almost exclusively. And speaking of inequality...
Yeah, because you wouldn't think it in America. There's a massive disparity between obviously the rich and the poor. The US has more billionaires in the world than any other country. But then you look at LA, you've got a lot of homeless living underground because they've got no money at all. Completely different.
Many make the simple but powerful assumption that America just isn't safe. This is usually what foreign citizens say until they actually come here. By this same logic, Paris, Brussels, London, Madrid, and almost every other city in Europe is unsafe as well.
I agree, and I think this is definitely a myth. London is extremely unsafe at the minute. You can't walk around with any expensive jewellery, you can't walk around with your phone in your hand. You will more than likely get attacked, you will get robbed.
Yes, there are guns, but most Americans have never seen or heard a gun being fired. In fact, most Swiss citizens are much more familiar with gunfire than us Americans. All this being said so far, people still expect all Americans to relish in the life of our stereotypes. Guns, fast food, and freedom! What I'm saying is, a lot of the world looks at America as overly patriotic. But here's an honest question. Have you ever met a Russian, Australian, a proud member of the UK? There's no shame in having pride in your country.
Too right, you should always be patriotic.
Us Americans are definitely patriotic, but so is the rest of the world. As they should be. It's not a crime to be proud of where you came from. But that doesn't stop others from thinking we only complain and boast about America whenever we travel abroad. This is largely anecdotal. In America, Americans like to complain just like the rest of us. Only a few of them ever even leave the country, so you're meeting an unrepresentative sample. But in their defense, many times, they're right. Yes, this can hit hard in the pride spot, but maybe Europeans could stand to smile a bit more, right?
Europeans are rude. Have you ever been abroad? Okay, you go on holiday. And I don't mean this in a nasty way, but Germans, French, others, they walk past you, they don't smile, they don't say please, they don't say thank you. It's only the Brits, we're just overly polite, and they're just rude. It's just the way it is.
No? Okay, fine, back to the apathetic, leave me alone face. By the way, that part was written for our European representative, by our European representative. I love all of you. Anyways, statistics viewed by outsiders show that the US is lagging behind. Similar to topics we've already discussed, there's another factor that we have to take into account: reporting. Every nation reports its own statistics. This means that making statistical comparisons between two developed nations, like the US and the UK, is an exercise in futility. The data is just too close and won't reveal much except that the US counts people one way and the US counts them another. That still doesn't make this misconception true. Americans are fake. Here's the thing. In Europe, citizens are almost proud of the fact that they're really standoffish. But once you get to know them, they're your friend for life. Well, here's a newsflash. Once you get to know an American, they'll also be your friend for life.
I do have to say, meeting Americans within sort of the military world, going on exercise with them, operations, extremely friendly, extremely welcoming. They will help you out. and will continue to speak to you for the rest of your life, and be your buddy and be your mate for sure.
Thing is, though, they don't use this as an excuse to be a jerk in the beginning. This list sounds great coming from an American. I was totally the one who should have read this one, but I digress. On a totally different but very popular misconception, Americans are the only ones who call football soccer.
Don't know, do they? I hope no one else calls it soccer because it's football.
Actually, a lot of the world calls it soccer.
Like who?
Even parts of Ireland still call it soccer. Oh, what do I mean by still? I'm glad you asked. It was actually the British who coined the term soccer. The word soccer is an abbreviation of association and first appeared in universities in the 1880s, sometime using the variant spelled soccer with a K. The word is
Did not know, but it's called football.
sometimes credited to Charles Redford Brown, an Oxford University student said to have been fond of shortened forms such as Breckers for breakfast and Rugger for rugby football. Britain actually started
just
using the word
lazy.
football in the late 20th century, possibly because people incorrectly saw it as an Americanism. This next one, Tristan couldn't believe. Could you not?
No.
I'm learning something. To our American viewers, did you know that people in Europe make fun of you for using air conditioning? Why do they need it? Why don't
I would love some aircon sometimes, like right now in the summer.
they just leave the window open? Mosquitoes, at least in Florida. But here's why they might be joining us soon. During the 2003 European heatwave, 70,000 people died. This was in large part due to the fact that European homes and buildings are not typically equipped with air conditioning.
You
While-
don't see it in the UK unless you're some millionaire in some massive house. You do not see aircon. It's not hot enough for long enough, but it would be handy at times.
They laugh at the Americans for this. Hotter summers are going to force them to take appropriate measures, especially since children and the elderly are very susceptible. Again, I stand by mosquitoes. I'm not opening my window in the summer. Winter, absolutely. Open windows. Moving into the top 9. That's a weird number. Top 9. Many parts of the world accuse the United States of accounting for 25% of the world's carbon emissions. Not so nice.
Most probably. But nah, I definitely don't agree with this. Don't think it's true.
It also accounts for 25% of the world's economic activity. The truth is that several nations, including countries like Canada, have higher per capita emissions than the US. Next, let's talk about how the world thinks Americans are ruining English.
No, Americans just have to be told everything in plain English. This is a sidewalk. Yes, it's a pavement. These are underpants. You have to be told they go underpants.
Actually, both British English and American English have diverged from a common 16th century ancestral standard, and in some ways, American English is closer to the original than British English.
I know, but these are my eyeglasses. You come on.
For example, American English has, for the most part, retained the language's rotosity, pronunciation of the R in words like hard, while British has, for the most part, dropped it. Furthermore, this shift in British English happened around the time of the American Revolution when wealthier Londoners wanted to distinguish themselves from the lower classes. This is only one example, but it goes to show that British English is not an unchanging standard any more than American English. On a totally different note, did you know that Americans don't all live in the suburbs? Nope, not true.
I didn't even realise this was a myth. Obviously, places like New York, LA, California.
The fact is that in America, you have plenty of people that live in cities like New York, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, and the list goes on. In
More
fact,
cities than anywhere, really, wouldn't they?
several regions of the United States are very European, like the Northeast Corridor, for example. The difference between the US and Europe is that if you want to live in the suburbs in the US, you can, but you don't have to. Now, this next one is just offensive. Americans are all dumb rednecks.
Are you not?
While there are certainly Americans who fit this stereotype, the vast majority don't. Most Americans live in cities near the coasts. Most of them are educated, and most of them are not very different from Europeans in any significant way. Every country has a less educated populace that they themselves make fun of. Even sophisticated nations like Sweden and Switzerland. Fair warning, the last 5 on our list get a bit dark and crazy, starting with the idea that America is imperialistic. In many parts of Europe, the United States is seen as an aggressive imperial power.
I think that social media, is that journalism? Is it because they are normally first into something? Is that because other countries persuade them to come in because they've got the manpower, they've got the kit and equipment, and just because it's all plastered over lights again, social media is bad. They love guns.
More so than Russia and China. This is largely because our military presence both in Europe and everywhere else. But
they've got a base in nearly every country possible, or every strong strategic point that go in.
Strong defense, Americans never forced you to watch our movies, quarter our soldiers, obey our laws, or get permission to leave your own countries. It was the Russians that did that, and much, much more. Food for thought, after World War II, the Americans liberated and left. The Russians liberated and stayed. All right, number 4 is sure to be a shocker to a lot of foreigners. Americans don't actually all walk around with guns. It's just not true.
A lot of you do, though. A lot of you do carry a sidearm. Not all of you, but I know a lot of you do carry a sidearm.
Except for a few places, the only people you'll ever see carrying guns in America are the police. In fact, you'll see more people walking around with guns in Switzerland than you ever would in America.
Yes, Switzerland, they're allowed to. They all go on the ranges daily. They're all trained on how to handle a weapon system to defend themselves if need be.
Okay. We admit that, like most stereotypes, there is some truth to this next one, but it's been wildly blown out of proportion. Americans are all crazy Christian right-wingers. There's something so right about saying it with that accent. Yes, there are a lot of Christians in America, and while some of them are
you'll get these here, there, and everywhere.
Crazy right-wingers, most of them aren't. In fact, if you ever get a chance to go and stay with one of those crazy Christian families, you'll see that most of them are just genuinely sweet people that go to church on Sundays. This next one sounds like a legit stand-up joke. If you get injured and can't pay for it, you'll just die in the street. Yeah, many people in Europe think.
I have heard this before. If you can't afford it, and a lot of people won't call an ambulance because they don't have insurance and they can't actually afford to call an ambulance or a paramedic. So I have actually heard this one, but I don't think if someone arrived on scene, they would actually just leave them bleeding out. But I hear that they don't make the call because they can't afford it.
This is what happens in America. As with most things that concern America, they're wrong. You can't be denied emergency medical care in the US. That would go against the Hippocratic Oath.
But you can build up a massive bill, can't you, if you are given it?
The difference is that you get a bill in the mail a few months later. Of course, debt is another issue, but let's get into that right now. Americans are all in debt. Actually, European citizens carry more debt than Americans.
Yeah, I've never heard that. I didn't think that would be... I think the main issue is obviously health insurance and health. A lot of people get in debt because of medication and health issues.
The average household debt in the US, OECD, is 113% of the household's income. In the UK, it's 156%.
Ooh.
In Sweden, 173%.
Jesus, Sweden and the UK.
And in Denmark, it's a whopping 305%.
What did Denmark do?
So, what are some misconceptions about the US that you'd like cleared up? Or do you live in America and want to...
Very, very interested. Some of those I think they were just trying to find some myths, but all of it very interesting to learn, very interesting to hear. Some of them you have heard of, some of you haven't. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon.